PlayStation 1 console is often nostalgically reminisced for its groundbreaking games, impressive advancements in 3D technology, and the inclusion of a CD-ROM that set the standard for future generations of gaming consoles. However, it is also known for some of the most difficult games of the 90s. Even today, years after becoming familiar with the ins and outs of 3D game design, many modern gamers would likely struggle to complete some of the PlayStation 1's hardest titles. This list will feature games that were intentionally designed to be challenging and difficult. So, join us as we take a closer look at the many titles that graced the Sony PlayStation console, and as we highlight the ones that truly stand out as the most difficult.
Disposal site and look for the DARPA chief.
Number 1. Metal Gear Solid. Hideo Kojima's 1998 game Metal Gear Solid is a difficult stealth action game that features complex environments with security cameras and perceptive guards, secret death traps, and bosses that require careful strategy to beat. The game is known for its Hollywood-inspired cinematography, high-quality voice acting, and sense of atmosphere. But the difficulty level of the game shouldn't be overlooked.
Don't talk to me like a rookie!
I'm telling you!
Number 2. Crash Bandicoot. The release of Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy in 2017 reminded players of the series' challenging difficulty. Despite its linear design, the game required precise platforming that was difficult to achieve, even with the improved graphics, cameras, and controls of the remakes. The latter games in the series had slightly easier challenges, but the original Crash Bandicoot is considered one of the most challenging games of its era due to its intentionally difficult obstacles and questionable design choices. Number 3. Grand Theft Auto, 1998. Grand Theft Auto for PlayStation is a game about stealing cars and causing chaos, but it also tests players' limits. The game is set in a top-down open world where the goal is to earn points by committing various crimes. However, the game makes it difficult by limiting the players' lives, one-hit deaths, and scarcity of powerful weapons. Additionally, the game lacks mid-level saving, making it clear that the game is meant to be challenging. Just have to mention, this game has brought about a significant transformation in the world of gaming as well, which is evident in the massive success of the Grand Theft Auto franchise, with numerous titles and even imitators. Number 4. Driver. 22 years after its release, the game Driver is still considered a prank due to the difficulty level of its tutorial mission. The first level of the game requires players to complete complex maneuvers within a limited time and space, and the game often fails to recognize when a maneuver is completed. Despite this, the game has difficulty spikes that are even more challenging than its opening level. The sequel of the game is considered less challenging than the original. Number 5. Darius Gaiden. Darius Gaiden is a classic shoot-'em-up game that challenges players to pilot the starship Silverhawk through scrolling levels, destroying enemy ships, and dodging obstacles. The game's difficulty is increased by the multiple group of enemies that flood the screen, creating hectic action. Players must constantly maneuver the Silverhawk and make split-second decisions to avoid projectiles in order to succeed. Number 6. Rayman. The original Rayman is considered one of the hardest games of the 1990s, and one of the hardest platformers ever made. Unlike other platformers that challenge players with precise movements, Rayman's challenges are often frustrating. The slippery slopes and spiked pits in levels can be deadly, but the game's unpredictable enemy spawning system makes it even harder to anticipate their placement. If not one of the hardest games, Rayman is certainly one of the most frustrating. Number 7. Vagrant Story. Vagrant Story is considered one of the most underrated and overlooked games of the PlayStation and one of the most difficult RPG games. The game's unique combat system can be difficult to learn, and even after mastering the basics, players still face brutal bosses, clever traps, and challenging enemies. The game's difficulty is part of what makes it enjoyable, but it does not make the game any easier. Number 8. Fear Effect. The original Fear Effect games are hard to play today due to their outdated elements such as casual racism and spicy cutscenes. However, the game was challenging even for its time. A combination of Resident Evil-like controls, point-and-click adventure puzzles, and stealth sequences made it one of the most difficult games of its era. Number 9. Heart of Darkness. Heart of Darkness is a relatively obscure game that is known in the day for its visuals, story, and gameplay. However, it is mostly remembered for its extreme difficulty spikes. The game's opening level is considered one of the most difficult in video game history, with enemies swarming the player and clunky controls. The difficult level remains high throughout the game, featuring labyrinth levels, confusing puzzles, and sometimes painful controls. Many gamers may not have the patience to complete this game. Actually, this game gave me mild panic attacks when I was a kid, especially its water levels. Remember that? Number 10. Tenchu Stealth Assassins. Stealth Assassins is a challenging action game set in feudal Japan, where the player controls one of two ninjas on night missions. With only 10 levels, the game is built on trial and error, as the player is given a grappling hook and unlimited tries, but little guidance on how to progress. The player must choose their inventory wisely and learn quickly as death means losing items. Number 11. Einhander. Einhander is a 2D shoot-'em-up game that was high-profile enough to attract early PS1 adopters, despite its retro level of difficulty. Rather than overwhelming players with many enemies, the game increases the health pool of the average enemy and requires players to navigate dangerous death zones. The game's challenging boss fights task players with taking down massive foes with complex and shifting attack strategies. Einhander is a great game that stands the test of time, but it should not be underestimated.
Final course.
Number 12. Irritating Stick. Irritating Stick is a game that lives up to its name. It is a blend of Super Monkey Ball and the board game Operation, requiring players to guide a small ball through themed mazes with limited room to maneuver while racing against a ticking clock. The game's difficulty increases with each level, and true mastery may not be possible for most players as each level presents new challenges.
That was fast. Check.
Number 13. Alundra. Alundra, not like its sequel Alundra 2, is a much-loved PlayStation action RPG that is known for its challenging gameplay. The game features platforming segments that require players to adapt to the game's isometric perspective and plan jumps accordingly. Additionally, The game's puzzles require subtle solutions, and players must pay close attention to avoid missing valuable items. The game's difficulty can be brutal at times, but it is worth the effort to succeed. Number 14. Incredible Crisis. Incredible Crisis is a collection of minigames that often require players to mash buttons as fast as possible. The game is similar to the torture device scene in Metal Gear Solid, but it stretches across most of the game. The game requires a bizarre set of skills and can frustrate even gamers who seek challenging games. Number 15. Oddworld, Abe's Oddysee. Abe's Oddysee is a game that follows the story of Abe, a factory worker who tries to save his fellow Madokans from a corporate scheme. The game features a combination of platforming, puzzles, and strategy elements that requires careful play. The game's difficulty is further enhanced by Abe's one-hit death, a limited number of Madokans that need to be saved for the good ending, and a checkpoint-based save system that encourages cautious play. Number 16. Tomb Raider 3. While the first two Tomb Raider games are difficult, Tomb Raider 3 is on a different level. The game's level design is bewildering, and it added a ridiculous number of spikes, boulders, pits, and traps that are difficult to anticipate. The game's level design tries to recreate the experience of having no idea what you're doing in a dark tomb, making it hard to recommend to anyone but masochists. Even with a strategy guide or walkthrough, it is still difficult to beat the game. Number 17. Nightmare Creatures. Nightmare Creatures is a challenging game set in a hellish world of monsters. The game's difficulty level is elevated by an adrenaline system that acts as a time limit, forcing players to quickly defeat enemies even when they are unprepared for them. The game's 3D action, adventure design, combined with the added difficulty, make it nearly impossible to play today. It's a game that doesn't want you to succeed, making it a true nightmare. Number 18. Kingsfield. Kingsfield came from the developers of the Soul series, From Software, and it is known to be one of the hardest PS1 titles ever. Even for hardcore Dark Souls veterans, well, not that I'm one to judge about that, but anyway, for us not too blessed with enhanced hand-to-eye coordination, this game will be challenging. It's a rough draft of Dark Souls mixed with a difficult dungeon crawler. The game's ambitious 3D visuals, brutal combat, traps, confusing controls, slow pace, and lack of direction make it a challenging experience for players. Despite its difficulty, it is considered a revolutionary game for its time, and it remains a challenging title for future generations. Number 19. Blasto. Blasto is a PS1 action platformer that was released before technology could fully support it. Although it starred with the late Phil Hartman, who was known for his dedication to his work, the game is remembered for its broken controls due to its slow movements, dodgy cameras, and levels with no barriers that result in many deaths from single jumps. It is considered a painful gaming experience that was initially appealing, but ultimately disappointing. Number 20. Valkyrie Profile. It can be easy to overlook just how challenging the initial Valkyrie Profile game truly was. Any characters that are not actively used by the player will not gain experience points, and with hard difficulty settings, all characters will start at level 1. The game becomes increasingly difficult as you progress throughout the game, and attempting to achieve the coveted A ending without a guide can drive even the most patient of players to frustration. Interestingly, playing in easy mode may prove to be more difficult as the best equipment can only be obtained in dungeons exclusive to hard mode. Additionally, since hard mode contains more battles, players can earn more experience points overall than they can in easy mode. Well, that's our list of the 20 hardest games on the PS1. If you're feeling brave enough to take on these challenges, just remember, it's not the end of the world if you can't beat them all. After all, you can always just switch over to Animal Crossing and spend your days fishing and decorating your virtual home instead. No judgment here. If you're looking for more fantastic games to explore on the PlayStation 1, be sure to check out our Ultimate PlayStation JRPGs video or our Ultimate PlayStation Platformers video.